and you have to filter out those that are invalid or expired. That's straightforward. Places perp order 2 also gives you the ability to control how many fill events you can generate. So if someone spams a lot of like one lot size orders, you basically you want to limit the amount of when you do taker when you take these orders, you don't want to run out of compute in the transaction. So you want to limit to I think we default to like 20, but I think it's safe to go. We tested it up to like 60. But yeah, 20 is pretty safe. So limit that limits the amount of orders that you would fill against at the top of the book. Vast majority, 99.9999% of the time, you're not going to hit that limit, even if it's 20. So it just makes it a little bit safer. And then there's also max quote quantity, which was requested by the UXD folks. So you could basically place an order in two ways, or you can limit based on the base quantity or the quote quantity. So you market order and you say, I want uh, 10 SOL, and my max quote quantity is 1,000 USDC, and it'll just stop executing at the time it reaches 10 SOL, or if it reaches 1,000 quote quantity or 1,000 USDC, whichever comes first. So it's like an anti-slippage kind of thing. Yep, and we have some documentation on that. You could just message Klossy. I think we got everyone, honestly. I'm just like mentioning it again just to, I think this is the only breaking change we've had, but it felt like it was worth it, mainly because market makers still lose money. There are still like TPS issues from time to time, and market makers do get whacked. And if their orders can just expire, they are safer and will probably quote tighter. So that remains to be seen, but I'm guessing they can quote tighter now because they don't have to worry about getting whacked and unable to cancel their orders during some network issues. Okay, cool. And then serum fees. So Max, you added this in here. If you want to, or do you have to unmute yourself again? Okay.
Yeah, I think the discussion came up. Maybe let me quickly summarize. I think someone brought up that serum fees would be a great source of revenue. As I think last week we pushed something like $500 million in volume through Serum, which I think would result in probably more than $50,000 in fees for that week alone. I gave some counter arguments. Mainly, I didn't feel strong about the argument that we need the money, and I felt there's benefit to having the lowest fees possible. And then I think there were some other opinions. Klossy talked a bit. Maybe Klossy, you want to go and give your point?
Yeah. Can you guys hear me well? Hello.
Yes.
Yep. Okay, perfect. Yeah. So from my point of view, given the fact that Serum's taker fees are significantly lower than Mango's perpetual fees, so 2.4 to 4 basis points, like kind of in a way pushes users to rather trade spot than perpetuals. And so if we're trying to get a lot of liquidity and a lot of volume on our perps, if there is more taker flow on spot, market makers themselves will also go and quote more on spot, because essentially for majority of the market maker strategies, you actually want to get hit, unless your strategy revolves only around mining the liquidity rewards. So from my perspective, like right now, there's a pretty big disadvantage to, for example, trading Mango if you're a taker to trading, Serum through Mango. if we were to make the taker fees on Serum at least match or a bit more, say, unattractive compared to Mango's perp markets taker fees, I think that's going to be beneficial to getting more activity on Mango, getting more liquidity on Mango. And that's what's important. Not really at all anything to do with sending more of that revenue to the Mango DAO vault, but for the point of like structurally, it's just more attractive to trade spot now than it is to trade perps. And then obviously anything that you're buying, you can transfer out. So there's a bit more utility to spot, and there's also benefits to trading on spot because of fees. If we were somehow to figure a way to make that more equal, I think we could naturally get more users on Mango, get more taker flow on Mango, rather than simply benefit Serum, because it's a benefit to trade spot through Mango because fees are so low essentially.
A lot of that volume, is it, man, I really wish like our database could distinguish, and maybe we could. Is it taker or maker? I suspect it's maker, because almost all of it is coming from like Sol USDC.
I think
yeah.
I think Max ran some stats on the volume breakdowns, and it was something along the lines of 3.4% maker, and the remainder was 96.6 taker. Max, maybe you can confirm on that. I read that in the in one of the channels.
Is that Max?
Yeah, he's put his hand up. I think you have to unmute him, or someone has to unmute him.
Yeah, oh man, this unmuting sucks hard. I'll just keep unmuted and try not to breathe too loud. No, yeah, so yeah, I think it's like 97% taker. We had some assumptions that it might be a few accounts or something, but it's actually fairly well spread over margin accounts. I didn't cross-reference wallets yet, although it's technically feasible.
Wow.
And I might do that maybe next week. But to me, it looks like there's people are trading large position spot very like happily, and there's just very little interest to trading perps. I think it's kind of weird when you're a taker to not use perpetuals, especially as most users I see, they have fairly short-term trading behavior, so funding rate is not really an issue. And the taker fees, if you like if you factor in the spread, are actually better on perpetuals for the sizes I see people trade. So I think there's maybe a communication issue here and how the front end displays the fees. I would like to add the spread or the slippage back in. I know I did a calculation for that once, and then we had like issues and we disabled it. Maybe I'll go and dig that code out, and we just have like a colorful number that tells you, hey, you have very low fees, but slippage ain't that great because it's a spot market, right? And on perpetuals we have really great slippage, and the difference in slippage is like 2 times the fee difference, so it should work out. The math checks out in the end for takers. The other option that could be, and I think someone brought that up, is that this is somewhat like not Mango UI flow. And it actually also doesn't look like UI flow. It looks fairly algorithmic. I think most of these traders these accounts do 3,000 trades a week, which I mean, taker trades get accounted a bit weirdly in Mango, especially if you have a big order. You might end up with 20 trades in the end. It's just a bit hard to like analyze it well, because we changed the ID intermediate. But maybe I need to clean up that data a bit, but I have the assumption that these takers are actually software.
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
Has to be, yeah, right? It's that much volume. So In that case, changing the GUI has maybe marginal improvements, and maybe just being more outspoken on Twitter would be a good thing. And then maybe also finding out who those users are and engaging a conversation, and maybe seeing if someone wants to talk to us and explain to us why they trade spot. And maybe we have systematic issues with our perpetuals that made people trade spot. Maybe a counterparty risk here. People don't want to be the OI.
I think
Or like,
because you said it's mostly taker, and of course, with that amount of volume, it must also be algorithmic. I think it's ARB. I think it's like people picking off Alameda or Jump, or maybe it's Alameda picking off other people. I don't know. My guess is it must be mostly ARB. And Mango has like the lower fees, and I don't know if you've looked at the accounts that were doing it, but using leverage on this is also kind of nice. Of course, you're also earning interest while you also trade. So there's no reason not to be doing it via Mango if you can help it.
Yeah, and so basically charging a fee wouldn't necessarily move volume over to perps, I feel. It would just reduce the volume and the impact we have on the ecosystem in terms of like raw numbers. Like everyone in Serum was really excited about these numbers, right? They're like, every time we like publish those, they're like, oh my God, these guys are so good. What the fuck are they doing? Right? Like we get a lot of credit for this.
Yeah, but what does it translate into like practically?
Yeah, but maybe charging the revenue is a good idea. I don't know, because I mean, it seems to be like a successful product. I would say like the product is working.
Yeah.
I have doubts that all the flow can be translated to perpetuals, right?
Yeah.
Or moved.
So I'm not sure what Mango's gaining at all from this flow. I mean, it helps Serum, you know, which is great, but if this is algorithmic flow and people are just leveraging the mega serum and the hoster rebate or whatever, which makes sense that they would, why shouldn't Mango then take, you know, maybe say half those fees and put it in the DAO and use it for Mango?
So I think there are a couple of reasons why. So it's kind of good for people to be using Mango because that means they have to have capital inside the Mango vaults. So I think that's probably good. It's good that people are integrated in Mango. There's also a time, like if it was a lot of maker flow, I think it could even one day, you could start internalizing flow too, right? So just we should just be biased in favor of having more people on board, even if they're not really paying much. And the fee doesn't seem like it's going to move the needle that much. Maybe we can introduce a fee on the deposits, right? Like not the deposits, the transfer of interest payments. Or something like that. It's going to be very hard to do a fee on spot trades too, technically. We could do it in the next version, of course, but the current version, everything is hard because, you know, it's deployed code.
There was a question, who are the known market making firms doing most of Mango's flow? I think most of them are not well known, actually. There are no.
Do we need to dox them? Is that?
Also because there's like people who are like privately talking with them, and they're members of the community. So I think like one big market maker, you'll find like I Will Not Save You, right? That's for instance like someone who's very active. GM is very active. Recently,
it's actually mostly me in various accounts.
And then also Daffy Sibyl attacking the DAO.
I have 99% of the volume actually, but I've been rotating between different accounts.
We have a dashboard where you see these anonymized addresses, and you can like go from there. You can pretty easily verify that none of them are like big firms.
Yeah. It's just weird. Like it's not obvious that anyone. Yeah, obviously I don't do 90% of the volume. That was a joke. But it's yeah, I don't know if we should like dox people without their consent. We don't really know if they are interested in talking about it. A lot of people don't, especially traders, don't want to talk about it. Right. Am I making money? Arguably, I don't know. Like, depends on, in USD, I think no. But yeah, let's the serum fees. I think the point Klossy makes here is pretty good. I think it's hard to shit. People keep getting.
It's all good. It was sorted out.
Okay.
Nikki is doing a good job right now.
Oh yeah, you have the participants, Nikki, you have the participants like box open, right? Like the window.
Yep.
That kind of shows who's all the people who are like raising hands. Yeah.
So yeah, if you do get unmuted, don't remute yourself because you'll have to get unmuted again. So maybe just try to be quiet, but just keep that in mind, please.
Yeah. Like I think iPhone is asking, he has his hand up.
Sorry, that was from earlier. Apologies.
Yeah, I disallowed changing your name. I don't know if that's yeah. I turned off every feature by default. It's emergency powers.
Freedom Act.
The Patriot Act. So, okay. Do you want to talk? Move on to governance updates.
Yep, let's do it. But yeah, just in summary, right? Like yeah, technical feasibility a bit annoying without adding the whole fee. I feel growth is a bit higher, and if someone really wants us to capture these fees, please send a pull request. I think probably easier if no one needs to like spend time on it. Now, governance updates, lock token voting. Christian, you want to go on that one? I think we need to unmute it.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Seems good. Yeah, so we're now in the phase where lock token voting will be enabled. I guess Maximilian and I will hit the button after the meeting. There's a forum post I wrote that explains what you need to do, what will change, where you find the new UI. In summary, if you currently have funds deposited in the governance, you will need to withdraw because there's a different program managing funds, and then you can deposit into the new program. And that's also where you would lock up tokens if you want to do that. And if there's questions, go to the forum or ask on Discord.
Yep. I guess there's still, other than voting power, there isn't a benefit to locked voting. Or locking your tokens.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. And the question is this the same UI? Yeah, it's a new area in the same old UI in DAO Beta or Realms today, where you can open up your account and see what kind of lock deposits you have and make new lockup deposits. It's not
Is the delegation feature available? Okay.
I think it's in the program, but we don't have it in the UI.
Yeah, that
I need
would
to
be
add
huge.
it to the UI.
Yeah, then we could have political parties.
Wait, it's different, right? You could have delegation to other people and then they vote in your name. But I think what we do have is delegation to just a different account. Okay, this could be done, but it would be inconvenient because you would need for every person vote manually for every person who delegated power to you. But yeah,
Oh,
we should
okay.
take this as the next thing to do in governance.
Okay. Yeah. So it's like bi-directional. The guy being the delegate also has to kind of consent.
And execute delegate duty. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there's a bunch of things we probably want to. I think locked token voting is also very special because it sets us up for. Now we have this information on chain, like how long term people are thinking with their tokens, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we can start handing out benefits based on that, or like being more like giving like freebies to these kind of people, right? Like one thing that came up was like more fee tiers, etc. Or I think that's kind of the next topic is loans to market makers. This is something Brian has been looking into, and I hope he's here with us today. But yeah, there were a bunch of ideas related to how the amount of locked tokens could influence a possible loan from the DAO. I'd say the most basic form is you need to be able to open your own proposal, right? So if you want a DAO to like finance your trading, then you need to be able to vote. Brian, are you here today? Brian Smith. I don't think so.
Signed up for the event on Discord.
Yeah, maybe couldn't make it. Well,
I
then I'll
see him.
go.
I think more
Oh, you see-
important with the loans, with all the stuff that Brian has done is more like assigning assigning this responsibility to someone and saying like this person should, now that the DAO has a Mango account that it owns, we can start, it can start making trades. I was thinking one way to do this is, you fund a DAO account with like $1 million, and you just delegate, you assign the delegate key to someone to purchase like $1 million worth of SOL.
That is in
yeah,
fact possible now. I think we started with, Adrian set it up this week, is a DAO owned account that has Reflink. I think it's the Reflink Mango DAO. And so that is, I think that was like kind of the first step in that direction. This DAO account now owns 10,000 MNGO. And yeah, we can create more Mango accounts with different purposes. Yeah, I think the delegate features is really great. We could use that for backstop liquidity, or loans to market makers, or as you said, discretional trades on behalf of the DAO.
And just sorry, I was struggling with the mute button, but I'm here. Yeah, I mean, it seems like the market maker loans on chain, now that we have delegate features, are like a really good way to kind of jumpstart liquidity and get market makers, on board and interested, and make some money for the DAO treasury.
Yeah. We did have this other goal of like purchasing. I know from your document last time of purchasing, we like agreed, okay, let's purchase some BTC and some SOL, especially SOL because we use so much of it in kind of operation, right? Keepers, blah blah blah. We should just execute on that, and I was thinking we could assign a person to be responsible over that, and maybe you also pay them for this.
This is Closey here. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I remember. So me and Brian had a conversation about this and about allocating, like treasury capital and how best to do that. I don't know. I mean, just outright buying an asset that could lose the treasury, USDC, for example, like BTC or Sol, that's kind of a risky play, which is, at least from my opinion, opposite of what we want to be doing with the treasury. Whereas the treasury should rather act as like a backstop liquidity source, as well as a source for capital for market makers. That's also extremely tricky. You're buying BTC and Sol, and what are you saying? You're saying it just stays in BTC and Sol forever. Do you sell it if it doubles in price? Do you sell it if it halves in price? And that's the tricky part there. You're essentially trading the treasury's funds. Whereas if we were able to set up either some sort of smart contract or have a vetted market maker that provides liquidity, say 10% for mid price on every contract for whatever, to 250K on either side, that's definitely going to have more of an upside. I mean, if they ever get hit, they take a profit. If they never get hit, it stands as liquidity, for that one day where it's a Black Monday or whatever. And then on the other side, it's more so like, what do we want the treasury to do, right? Do we want it to be sort of a gamble on BTC or Solana, or do we want
let me just I think there's a miscommunication. I don't think we agreed. I don't think anyone was suggesting we put all the money in BTC and Sol. I think there was like a allocate 10%
small,
to Sol.
like a small little allocation.
Yeah, I think that's necessary actually. Like not even, all of your points stand. I'm just clarifying, these are not even mutually exclusive. It's like, I think we absolutely do need some Sol. We had a whole discussion about this 2 weeks ago, and
Agreed, we need Sol. We're spending, I think, 300 Sol a year or something like that.
Yeah, I would
Or
just
500.
Say, yeah, I would just say we do that because we had a lot of these, like Brian, he put in all this work he made the spreadsheet and just kind of organized this thing, and then we just didn't do it. Understandably, we don't have like the tech implemented yet, but basically, who wants to take I can take responsibility to like have done that by 2 weeks from now, but I would prefer if someone else wants to take responsibility. Maybe we'll pay. We'll figure some way to execute on these things. Yeah.
No, don't worry. I think I can set it up. I would like to have separate votes on BTC versus Sol, because I personally disagree with Bitcoin. We should just vote it out instead of like talking forever.
Yeah.
And Sol the same if the majority disagrees about it, and we should just like pick contributors USDC and have them spend Sol and like figure it out themselves. That's also fine, right? Like I don't think it's a big issue.
Agreed.
So I'll set up separate votes. I have an idea how I'm going to do it, so put it on my list. Let's move on.
Yep, that's all I wanted to say, because I just worried that we produced all this effort and then we didn't like execute on it. Okay, then loans to market makers. That's all of those are good points. How do we like execute on that? The trusted market makers, like actually that's the only like difficult part, right?
Yeah, I think, I mean, if you have a good sort of understanding of who the largest market makers are globally, you can put together a program, but it doesn't sort of align with the whole decentralized fashion of giving it out on chain, etc. I mean, there's a world where like we already know who the the most sophisticated and risk-free sort of market makers that we can provide capital to is, and we can set that up and go out to them, try to attract them to Mango, to the market makers that are already on Mango that have been here for quite some time. And that's a pretty good pool, pretty trustworthy pool. We all know essentially who those market makers are, not to dox them, but yeah, I think that's a good starting point. I think from GM's perspective, like we could run with this with Max and try to think about how to implement it with the DAO, whereby every single market maker has to come on to the forum, has to give a bit of details about themselves. How do they plan to collateralize it? If they want to collateralize it, what are the rates they're willing to pay? How does that look like for us? From the perspective of, do we want to earn a rate on that capital or not? So some centralized exchanges will give out capital for free. Right now, you can probably get USDC from Genesis for about 2% annualized if you're the right market maker or the right firm. So like a bunch of these like considerations, I think it dwindles down to, you have a forum where it's, I don't know, has anyone used TrueFi here, where you'd have market makers that provide details about themselves, and like all the other market makers who are sticking up their capital, or all the capital management firms, they'll say, okay, Alameda vouched for Volkswagen, so we're happy to give 10 million to Volkswagen at 14% annualized for a term of 2 months, for example. So I think what we could do is we could kind of really touch upon the structure whereby TrueFi operates with, as well as like, if you think like initially market makers who are trying to get capital or become a designated market maker on DYDX, for example, had to come in, give out a statement of who they are, what they do, some sort of proof. From our side, we know who everyone is and what they do, so that's obviously beneficial there. So I think it's just a case of like, what are we all happy with, and are we happy with the DAO votes? And you have to have a minimum amount of Mango to get a line of credit, and then the actual terms around those lines of credit, are to be decided in these forums with the market makers. What can they bring to the table? That capital will stay on a delegated account. Will it, won't it, and things like this.
I think, okay, if you formulate, because I think discussion can happen forever, and it's like just better to, we just have a bunch of money sitting there doing nothing. So it would be better, I think, if we just formulated, what do we want the market maker to do? And then even within our community, there are people, I can do it, like, and we'll just have a vote. I Will Not Save You could do it. Green Mamba can do it. So we'll just like, or we could even split between there's no reason to rope in like Alameda or,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, but this is a good tool to, attract them if they wanted to come and join around.
I'll take this also on the
so it's
governance
like,
development list. I think what we need is a proposal where you can like say, here's a new Mango account. The DAO should fund it with this amount of money. It should delegate it to me. I have this much Mango. By the way, I show you how much I've been trading on Mango also, or I write a nice text, or I promise you a great return. And either we know the person or not, or we're going to vote yes or no, and I think that's fine. And then I think apart from that, for people who can't make the vote themselves because they're trading on a small operation, maybe worth saying, I have been doing this to some traders, and I'm happy to do it for others as well. Just agree on like very informal deals. Like it doesn't need to pass everything by the DAO. Especially if the amount is something like an individual person puts them, like Daffy, me, Stefan, Swap, right? It can be completely decentralized in that sense, where maybe we have a Discord channel where people just are like, hey, I'm running this trading thing, I'm looking for money, right? Just post in the market makers channel, be like, hey, I'm trying to raise funds. The technical means are there. I've been using it with some people, and I think the DAO is going to use it with the big market makers. So, right, I can also be peer-to-peer. It doesn't need to pass by a big quorum, and it doesn't need to require you to have a lot of Mango to get started. And I think that that's probably the lowest barrier to entry, but also the highest expense. Like the liquidity will be more expensive this way, but at least I think it's organized. So if we make a document where we write, hey, in case you can't bring up the vote, just post in a channel that you're raising funds, or in the forums. I think that's fine.
Klossy, do you want to organize this?
We've got this. Don't worry. Yeah, it's all right.
Nice.
So basically, I mean, if I understood correctly, it's open forum for people bidding on this money that the DAO is, and they have to just demonstrate that they're trustworthy, that they know what they're doing with respect to market making, that they can offer the better deal, blah, blah, blah. Right?
Yeah, very low tech, and we just go forward, see what happens. In a worst case, we upgrade the Mango program. There is one thing that kind of ties into this, a feature that Klossy, you mentioned, is this like risk limit feature, right? That locks down an account when it becomes over leverage. Is this something we want here? Is this something we want independently?
Yeah, I think absolutely. Like time and time again, on the check side, when we've given out lines of credit, like we'll have, clients that had breached the leverage restrictions that we put on, that account that they're trading with. So if there's a way for, this to be limited, that makes it even more safer. I mean, it is derivatives trading, and you're providing capital to trade derivatives. That's like double the risk, right? Because you could already leverage up 20x if you wanted to. So I think for the most part, we should have that implemented as well as a sort of priority before we give out cash. I've seen lenders lose millions because of this, and then you almost have no recourse. It's not like Mango DAO is going to go to some court somewhere to say, hey, look, market maker number one, you owe us this much because you lost it. And that's like two parts. Like one is like a limit to leverage on an account, like a max, like once you go above that, either the positions are automatically closed, which then you got to consider slippage and things like that, or you just have a max risk limit where, like, if you give someone $1 million, the max risk limit on Bitcoin US dollar, for example, is, let's say 5 Bitcoin or 10 Bitcoin. So the max position they can ever get into is 5 Bitcoin or 10 Bitcoin. And not just for the line of credit business or, providing market makers with a line of credit. That's very valuable for market makers as well. So like if you accidentally send 2 quotes and you get hit on both of them, the second one becomes invalid because you know that you never wanted to take more than 5 Bitcoin worth of risk, for example.
Yeah, it's again, like as usual, these things take a lot of we're often
Energy,
really
yeah.
constrained on dev time, and
I think Microwave Pull-Up put up a grant for this in particular as an anchor program with the latest hackathon.
Again, the only so it can be done. It probably, I mean, it doesn't even have to be done as a program upgrade on the Mango side. However, if you put a program like on top of it, basically, another smart contract that governs the Mango account, now you have to also amend the governance UI, and then that ropes in a whole bunch of other people who are doing different work. So it's just going to take, I wouldn't say this is absolutely necessary. I think if you start with, if you just start with, basically.
Yeah, I mean, if you start with the right,
trustworthy.
market makers, then it's fine. But it's always that one day where there's something that you can't account for that happens, and that account gets liquidated.
We could also start with less capital, right? Like we can start. We can basically
let's not bet the farm.
We can bet on goodwill, and also it's easy to monitor an account after the fact and say, hey, like you reached 10x leverage yesterday, give back the money. Stuff like that. It's easy to retroactively so not super worried about it. But yeah, you're right that we should do it, and we will have these kind of risk limits implemented eventually. So
yeah, I mean, there's plenty of on-chain programs lending to blue chip market makers with zero collateralization or control or anything like that. And I mean, this isn't even going to be big dollars. Like, I don't think Wintermute's going to blow up their rep for $1 million from Mango DAO. And I mean, those sort of risk controls also just reduce the capital efficiency of the capital that we're providing. And so it increases the amount that we have to borrow for a given amount of liquidity.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed.
Okay.
So moving on to the next topic. Is it Mango deposit? I don't understand these two.
Then, so yeah, there's just general, like there's a, the DAO can control Mango account. We have deposit implemented, and ref links. I think that was just the update, and I think we discussed that during the previous discussion. So we'll move on to the next one, which is a token auction. This is like I think a very important topic to discuss in larger group, I feel, because there's it touches a lot the issues we see in other DAOs, but to some extent we want to prevent them before they happen inside Mango. Specifically, there it seems to be we seem like it looks like Mango is very illiquid, and so there would be two ways basically to sell large amounts of Mango or buy large amounts of Mango. One is just like slowly accumulating or offloading, and the other one is work with an OTC. But what we hear in terms of like OTC deals, or also just peer-to-peer VCs approaching Mango and being like, hey, we'd like to deploy capital. How about $50 million? I don't know, it's just like, it doesn't really make sense treasury-wise right now, maybe. But then maybe that it would make sense to, if we want to do it, that we're prepared for it, and we have a path that doesn't necessarily rely on playing by the rules of these capital providers, which usually want a 5-year lockup and in return 20% discount. And that just seems like maybe not the right move for us, especially as we did have a very different history in terms of like raising capital for this project, and yeah, how we would like these decisions to be made, rather through pluralism and voting, rather than like meetings with 2 or 3 people. And so up came this idea to maybe revive a bit the token auction, and transition to a model where we where the DAO doesn't have only an initial liquidity event, but also similar to equities, closing auctions, a regular event where any large holder or any large buyer can try to participate in an auction, meaning these this creates basically like a time point, right? Maybe once a month, once a quarter, where large amounts of Mango can be transacted. But it's still a fair market mechanism that has its own price discovery. So we don't necessarily remove demand or supply from the public market, which I think is something I intuitively felt we mesh a bit more with. But yeah, I just thought to present this idea and just get some general feedback on it. And then afterwards, maybe dive with Henry a bit in technical discussion of how that could look like.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I think like a weekly or monthly kind of auctions for MNGO would be cool. The one that I was discussing with Henry, coming up with like implementation was kind of like the NASDAQ closing auction, where, and I think Max and Henry came up with a way to do sealed bids. Hey, is Henry unmuted?
Yeah, I'm unmuted. I'm just letting you speak.
Oh, thank you for letting me speak. So it just NASDAQ closing auction, basically, or opening auction. But theirs is very complicated, but you know, we can do something much less complicated, I think, on chain. And Henry and Max came up with a sealed bids mechanism that I'd never heard of. So I don't know if Henry, you want to give like a high level intro to this token auction?
Yeah, well, yeah, I guess the high level is just that, you know, the idea was fun and all, and it was a good way to get people to just throw all their money in, but there was just too much like psyops in just being able to see other people's bids, knowing what the final price was going to be, and then last minute cancellations. So yeah, Max had this thing where like we should just do seal bid auction on chain, and it's something I've been kind of thinking about doing for a while as well. So that's basically it. It would just be like you create an auction, little auction account on chain, and then anyone who wants to sell can put in their tokens. They can say what their reserve price is, like what's the minimum they'll be willing to accept for it. And then once everyone's put all their tokens in, now again, one of these things with the NASDAQ closed auction, it might be public or it might be sealed as to like actually how much is up for sale. But I think I prefer unsealed for the sellers, just so that the people buying know how much is up for sale, what is the minimum price, all this kind of stuff. And then on the other side, there's like the bidding section where people submit sealed bids basically on chain, and we just do that using the public private key encryption that that all of Solana uses basically. And then what happens is the auction has a private key which can unseal all the bids basically, and we can verify this all on chain and stuff. So it's a pretty efficient implementation of a sealed bid auction on chain. And then basically what happens is we loop over all of the bids that happen. We put them into one of these kind of CryptBit trees that sorts everything by order size. And then we just start at the top of the bid tree and we start at the bottom of the ask tree, and we just start matching, and we see, okay, do we fill all the bid demand? Do we fill all the ask demand? Or do we meet somewhere in the middle without filling both? And once that happens, once you find this price, that's basically the sell price. So you want to find the lowest bid price that will satisfy all of the demand that's up for sale, basically. So if there's 1 million tokens for sale, and someone puts in like a bid for 500,000 at 20 cents, and then another 500,000 at 15 cents, the price ends up being 15 cents for everyone. And then the alternative way for the NYSE thing is that you actually do like a midpoint, where you would take the reserve price of the seller, and you would take sort of the average between the seller and the bidder. But I don't particularly like that as much, but interested to hear other people's opinions on sort of auction design. And then after that, everyone just gets distributed out their tokens, and depending on the options that are chosen by the auction people, I think we're going to try and make it so that you could actually sell locked tokens automatically into one of these new locked token accounts that we've got as part of the new governance program written by Christian. So I think that's pretty much it. Yeah, the details. I'm proposing to just write it. So like I wrote the IDO thing as like my first kind of like project in Solana, and I'm quite happy to just go ahead and write the smart contract for this, write up a few tests in JavaScript, and then whenever there's like time in the Mango team to like make like a GUI or start running these more regularly or get it audited or whatever needs to be done.
Yeah, that's always the hard part. I think in getting the resources to actually to make it used and usable. Cool. This is iPhone. Oh, nice. Expert on closing auctions. Interesting. Yeah, we didn't even talk to you about this. Yeah. See, the thing is, what we had come up with was so easy that like it was because NASDAQ, like the NASDAQ cross, I was trying to read into this, and they have all kinds of weird orders and blah blah blah. And we just have a simple kind of crossing of 2 limit order books.
Yeah, I'd be interested to understand the difference between like when you want to do, say, like this cross thing where you've got the midpoint between the lowest bid and the highest ask, or where you're just doing like a traditional like multi-unit auction where you just choose the lowest bid. So it's more in favor of the seller basically if you choose the lowest bid rather than the midpoint.
If you choose the lowest bid, it's in favor of the seller.
Yeah, because they get more money. If it was the midpoint, they would get
Oh.
like half as much.
Oh, assuming the seller was going for 0. Oh, okay. If the seller,
the two
okay.
elements here.
So, yeah.
Or even like,
I think there's-
Or even
between
it's just
10
less than because the highest ask it's crossed, so the highest ask is lower. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's like an element here where people might want to buy specific amounts of mango at specific prices, kind of. So I don't know, maybe a DAO wants to buy enough mango for their raffling, right? Or but that's maybe not enough. Or market maker wants to buy enough mango to make the proposal to get a loan. So I see this more like from a perspective of like, hey, we're gonna add all these like really mean features to like lock tokens that they're gonna give like a lot of incentive for people to have them. And then we have this very illiquid spot market where you can basically not buy anything because no one wants to sell, except maybe for the people in the options vaults. And so it's basically we need a way for people to like buy large amounts, I think. And yeah, I feel like this auction mechanism is great for that. It seems to work very well for the Nasdaq. So Brian, yeah, it would be really cool if you're an expert. We'll share the Notion doc where we have our current thoughts written down, and please like take everything apart. Ideally send us also some resources. I'm pretty sure you're right about a lot of these things. And even if we don't agree in the end, right, it's I'll be super keen to learn. I think Henry probably as well, right? You seem to be like the auctions geek here anyways. And yeah, I'll update everyone with like how my experiments go with the encryption part. I did today like a basic prototype, and I just didn't run it yet. So it's like probably like 1 or 2 more days of work. Hopefully you get everything in compute limits and we can move ahead. But yeah, super keen to hear what you think. And yeah, we want to get it right. I think that's the part. And we have a bunch of use cases also that are specific. And I think there's to some extent there's this initial token sale use case, and to some extent there's the regular token sale use case. And maybe because we're not focused on one of them, we're muddying it a bit, or maybe we just need 2 methods for the 2. So I think it's about like disentangling those issues and to move forward.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's basically it. I think we got most of the topics.
Open source. I think that one is cool. You want to go?
I think Udav had their hand raised.
Okay.
Oh, nice.
I think he's
been
unmuted.
unmuted.
Yeah.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Hey guys. Yeah. I just wanted to share that we run quite similar auctions at Friction through Channel. We spent a bunch of time thinking about this. We're also kind of from the Nasdaq NYSE. I personally worked on the Platts window, which is also it's an open auction. Right now our Friction auctions are not encrypted like that. So I think it would be really cool to see if we can try to build something that's like fit for this use case, because we already have we have like 14 market makers who participate in our auctions every week. And we can like design something that fits the parameters that you guys are talking about. We've thought a lot about how we structure the auctions as well. So yeah, it would be really fun to work on this and see if we can find a good use case. Be really curious to see how you do the seal bid process. So yeah, we can chat about that too.
Do you have a link?
It's already done. So
yeah, we'll probably
am I
not
the
gonna
only
use
one?
it if it's not open source. That's also maybe a consideration here. Right.
Yeah, it can be open source pretty soon. We just, if you guys want to review it, then we should make it open source. We're about to become like fully permissionless for anyone to participate. We were just going through some legal stuff on our end, but yeah, it should be open source soon as we get someone to review it.
Am I the only one that wants to make everyone market buy on the open market?
Well,
auctions are market buys.
I mean, there is another. So when I think a lot of VCs, yeah, disable the sell button. It's like you know, like what's the Reno and Robinhood disabled the buy button for some assets. This is anyway.
Yeah, that was just the problem internally though, because they couldn't do the clearing properly.
Yeah. And okay, so the other point, you know, I mean, Nick was saying make people buy on the open market, but sort of related is you could make it more liquid. You could just say like, hey, as part of this loan to market makers, you say you have to market make on the MNGO USDC market. And I think partially, I don't know why. I mean, really, it's like we haven't had time to do it. I would do it myself, honestly. But maybe that would help. It still means that buyers and sellers are not necessarily coming at the same time, and people pay more to the market maker for like bridging this liquidity event, right, from buyers and sellers. And the good thing about the auction is that it brings all of the interested parties at one time, and we advertise it, we make it a whole event, everyone comes together. Yeah, that's like the main advantage. But we should probably also make the open market better. Sometimes you do hear from VCs and others that the market is just too illiquid to buy MNGO. And that would be, if we solve that, then that that we could see if that argument is true. I suspect it's not that's not the reason why they don't get more MNGO. I think the business model is for getting it cheap, right? And with a lot of discounts. So that's probably the bigger reason. Okay, open source. I can talk about this, but let me get some water first. So I'll be back.
Should we fill our last Oracle spot?
Cool. Sorry, still feeling some of the effects of the alcohol. Okay, so the topic of open source versus closed source. I mean, I should set the stage here because I should, let's explain where we're at. Mango has everything open source, right? I think there's like one repo somewhere. I don't know, if you look at our repos, there's now like dozens of repos. And I think maybe there's one repo that isn't. Even the market maker repos are open source. So basically everything is open source. And it has been from the beginning. This is unique in that if you look at the crypto ecosystem, and I haven't done the research, so maybe someone in the chat could like tell me if I'm making stuff up. but the UI is like not open source in most cases, or maybe all cases. I'm not sure. I mean, if you look at like wallets, Phantom's not open source. It is like in Solana, right? Most of the perp trading protocols are either closed source program and basically entirely closed source, or they're just closed source on the UI. But as far as I know, there isn't anyone who makes an open source UI. And you know, it's cool and it's helped. I don't want to say like this is without any benefits, and there will always, you know, people could even chime in. There's a lot of people who have benefited from the open source, and we've benefited from them being able to just like go look at what their, you know, how the UI works, and basically fiddle with it and then make contributions themselves. But also we know that there's an enormous amount of work that goes into building the UI and maintaining it and making it good for users. And there's a lot of like tricks that you have to do to make, you know, even transactions feel fast, or transactions feel faster. And that just takes a lot of manpower, labor, brain power, skills. And it is a little bit demotivating. You know, Tyler's not on the chat right now, but he has mentioned it. You know, others have mentioned it to me when you spend a lot of time on a new feature, and then it's just like added into all of the other protocols, right? And it's a one-way flow of information. It's not like we are looking at other people's implementations or implementation details and saying, oh yeah, that's a cool design. Let's take that. We should be in Mango as well. And so this is the conflict, right? Do we gain more from being open source than we lose? That's one question. Another question is, in what time frame do we adjudicate this topic? Like, do you see 2 years from now, 3 years from now, do you see like open source projects open source UIs being the successful ones, the dominant ones, the ones with all the developers, the resources, the ones that basically have the capacity to have all of trading on chain? Is it the open source versions, or is it the closed source versions? Yeah, I mean, those are kind of the big questions. Max is raising his hand. I think there are like some people who should just stay unmuted. If you like want to be involved in this discussion, I think you should just raise your hand and just.
Yeah, I had to mute because the meeting is slightly over time.
What the pill says,
completely agree.
but Uniswap built a lot of open source UI. That may be correct. I just don't know. If someone could just tell me if that's true.
Yeah, in fact, the Uniswap UI is often open source.
Can we have like I was hoping Swapman would be on the channel on the.
Yeah, but just as a reference, maybe here the cap sale
or Armani even.
The Mango caps were, for instance, based on Uniswap.
We need an open source champion to defend it. So, okay, people make this claim about GPL license. Yeah, how do you actually enforce? Oh, did Mango get forked? Wait, Max is also talking. I can't hear Max at all.
Yeah, can you hear me?
I think something weird's happening.
Daffy, can you not hear Max?
Max, can you say something?
Yeah, I'm talking.
Oh, I can't hear anyone actually. That sucks. Whoops. Okay, it's a problem on my end then. Sorry.
Okay. So yeah, just to say what you didn't hear. Actually, for the Mango caps,
Can you say
we
something
use the
now?
Uniswap UI. Yeah. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Okay.
Daffy silently rambling. Nice. Yeah, is Swap here actually? I think he's like the best guy to fight this too.
Can you say something?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. So what they just said is like, I think we benefited from other people open sourcing, right? Like the Mango cap sale, that was Unisocks UI. I literally looked at their CSS classes and like used that as a starting point. I didn't look at their Web3 code so much, but to some parts as well, like figure out how they do the shipping and things like that. So I think it was definitely valuable. I've been always like open sourcing stuff also to not have to maintain it, with mixed, I would say, success. I open sourced the Serum history and I didn't really like have the result that I wanted it to have because no one really like maintained it or like contributed to it. I see more contributions now on client libraries, like the C++ one. There's a healthy community from the start. But yeah, and some of the projects are so specific to us that people just don't contribute back. I think UXD made their own version of the MCAPs, like a hoodie or something, and that particular hoodie page, I don't know if it's open source. Also don't know if it's necessary, right? Maybe there's not so much contribution there, but in general, it feels like some things are kind of specific to us and people don't really benefit from having them, except for maybe forking Mango. And then there are some things that are generally interesting to see, right? Like how we build our UI. I think that's probably very interesting for people as a resource for how to build good UI, or maybe also crappy UI. Maybe we're really bad at it. I don't know because I can't see other projects, but until proven wrong, I'll claim we're really good at it.
Right. I agree with all of what you said. Like, yeah, you started with, you started the Mango caps with the Unisocks. I started the interest rate function looking at DYDX, not their code, but their documentation. And so this is, and obviously Serum Dex and the Serum UI. And so this is not a claim about like whether we have benefited from open source or not. Obviously we have, and the logic here is that, okay, because we have benefited from open source, we put it back in, we build, we stand on the shoulders of giants, and maybe some can stand on our shoulders. But when it turns asymmetric, I start to have doubts about whether our logic here, our strategy here is actually sustainable. Because if we are if it's asymmetric in this way, where we come up with a lot of designs and we spend a lot of time, iterating everything that you see in Mango, like maybe it's not even that much code. Maybe it looks like, oh, it's only like 1,000 lines or 2,000 lines. There were a lot of iterations to get to that point. And you know, you can take it and then you can build on top of it, but it's asymmetric when we are building, we cannot look at other people's innovations, and other people also have great innovations, right? Like they spend a lot of time. And if it's asymmetric in this way, you're kind of leaking energy. So we can have all these ideals about, we have this open and transparent forum, and we have, you know, we have this crypto ideology of, you know, like even the way you know, the Mango DAO started was not, there were no pre-sales, etc. We can have all this stuff, but then if you're leaking your labor and energy to people who don't share your values, in the long run, your values will lose, and so maybe you have to modify your values. By the way, I want to argue this, like, I'm still pro open source, but my faith has been going down over time. But I'm still on the, you know, on the 0 to 100 scale. I'm still above 50.
I have a funny like idea.
Yeah.
We could do a vampire GPL. So the vampire GPL would work like this. It's if you copy the source code and you don't open source it, you basically grant us the option to at any given moment exploit any bug in your code and steal all your users' funds, and you can't prosecute us legally for that. And so you're showing your neck, right? And you're exposing yourselves. And I can tell you, like, I think that would be like probably like a really serious deterrent. We're not gonna go to meat space, but we're just making sure we're covered in meat space.
Yeah.
Because I mean, those people would still be liable for the loss of the users' funds in front of the users, right? Because they chose this like arbitrary software license to build with. So it makes things hardly usable unless you open source, because you expose yourself to extreme risk, right? It could be that someone leaks us a bug in a smart contract that leads to loss of funds, and we fix it in mainnet, but before we deploy the fix, we also clean up some of the forks.
Yeah, but
right, and it's legal because they're using the code without open sourcing, so or they're using modifications without open sourcing.
Okay, I think there's two responses to this one. So the first one is, I'm not sure people will actually want to exploit other people's programs and take the money. You know, I like the idea that, okay, you don't involve the legal system or whatever, but still, how many people do we have who are both? I think most Mango devs are more of the white hat type anyway. So that's kind of hard. And then also there's a lot of ambiguity on what is a fork and isn't a fork. And I just don't like, I don't even like the word fork, because that's not actually what I'm talking about here. I think people who just straight fork are not a problem at all. Yeah, like when has a fork ever like succeeded? You know, this is straight fork is not a problem. What's more of a problem is you have equal competitors, right? Like the Mango dev team is pretty strong. In my opinion, the strongest. And there are other pretty strong teams, but it's asymmetric. Just any ideas we come up with, right, can quickly be expropriated by others, even to the extent where other teams will come and ask us. They'll be like, hey, how does this margining work? How does this, can you explain to me, here's line of 4080 in mango state.rs. I see you did this margining this way. Can you explain this to me? Even this, right? And it's just not symmetric. It's not, I don't have any insight into how other people do their things. And I am worried that in the long run, we won't just win by being like brute forcing it, you know, like being just stronger and better, because people get old, people get tired, people get demotivated, people lose, there's like the artistic, you know, the creator sense of like, I'm building this beautiful, glorious thing and it's mine, and I will have it, and you know, people will see that I built it. And there's a, you know, people want to be known as like great engineers, but you can do all that, and then like 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, everyone else has it because it's just a few copy paste. It's yeah. So I don't know if fork is the right word. It's just like, you just call it more like asymmetric competition that I'm more worried about. And where will the money flow? Sorry, Max, are you speaking?
No.
Yeah, I didn't know if I lost my sound. I'm worried about like where the money will flow in a few years. If someone's able to enforce it, if someone's able to like not leak energy in this way, right? They're able to keep a closed, sealed system, and you know, Mango's constantly leaking energy. And the VCs, all the billions of dollars that all the VCs have raised now, all of that goes into closed source ecosystems. I'm afraid we will lose just, you know, and losing is the worst. Okay, there's like no, there's no having ethics and then losing means the people you claim, you basically let the wrong side win. And I'm not sure that's ethical either. Sorry, known forks have the same vulnerability that we are allowing for with Vampire GPL. Anyway. That's correct. But yeah, I just don't think forks is the right word. I'm gonna ban the word fork. It's just it's a wrong. People are thinking about it the wrong way if they start thinking in terms of the word fork. So maybe I have to also defend the open source side too. So I have some arguments.
Yeah, I personally wouldn't work on this project, right? If it wasn't open source to some extent. Like, it's like, for me, it's like how crypto should be. I don't know if I want to like develop closed source, right? This is like the first thing, and I probably like a lot of people will share that opinion. That people have contributed to Mango. So I feel like I'm like 100% not willing to compromise on that. Rather thinking about like, what's the competitive edge that we create from being open, and those things often go into like hippie, like drum circle kind of, yeah, it would be all really, really great, but in the end it's just more work.
Yeah.
Right, like we see there's a yeah, there's a stark difference in like the amount of support we give usually for open source projects and the amount of return we get in terms of like contribution power. Just like perceived, it seems that people are very willing to contribute also to closed source projects in general. Good people for sure, as long as they're paid well. But like open source automatically is this only resource, the only book you can find to figure out how to do things. And then automatically people ask all kinds of questions, right? Or like what you said, right? The state RS is like very extreme. But I mean, I've been asked so many times to set up like Serum history for other projects to just want to.
We're setting up Mango IDO.
Mango IDO, yeah. Mango IDO from VC funded projects.
Yeah.
Oh, of course, we're counting names, more than 20 by now. Right,
it's,
like,
it's so insulting, right? Like, you have spent, Tyler spent, actually Jeff, everyone who's a Mango has spent so much time and energy on people who majority actually I think have good intentions. There is a notable minority of people who are just kind of abusing it, and maybe we just live with that, right? Maybe.
I think there should
If I
be
can jump in briefly.
Yes.
Yeah, please.
Yes.
So I agree with Max. So I would have been much less interested in joining the Mango project if things were closed source. I think this is a great. Many people share this value and are then more interested in contributing. And it's also much more easy to get started when you don't have to dig through secret repositories. It's just more appealing in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
I agree though about the asymmetry of working with other projects. And at least professional developers, I would assume, would be deterred if our code was just GPL, even if it's really hard to enforce. So at least I've noticed this personally. Looking at GPL repos is always tricky because of potential license claims.
Yeah.
But there's also a two-level thing here, right? On the one hand, there's people literally look at the code and copy things. But there's also the question of just ideas or innovations that Mango does that can just be taken more easily.
Yeah.
And I think there, even if we had a great Vampire GPL or just GPL or some other way of deterring that, it would still be the case that other projects would copy if there's a great innovation. And I think that's also fine. I think that was something we should live with and be okay with, because there's just no way to deal with that. It makes sense.
Yeah. I think like Max said, so my view from the beginning was it's easy to be open source, and there might even be legal benefits to being open source. It's people like you more to being open source. I prefer open source projects, obviously, and that's why we are the most open source project. But yeah, I don't. Max, what was this thing? It was like hippies in a drum circle.
Yeah, I mean, right, like open source odds is messier. Like we're slower. We are actually slower because we're giving support.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe this is a sticking point. So if you're open source, it's always easy to accidentally give too much support for free if people ask nicely. In a way, that's also one of the cool things in open source. You can just ping the developers and often they will just reply. But it's also completely fine to say, well, this is open source, but if you want input on setting this up, then you will have to pay the DAO, or there's options there.
Yeah.
Oh.
But it would be a distraction, like a distraction for what we're doing right now for us to offer support for other projects. But saying no is hard, and maybe we just need to lean more into this direction.
Yeah, I remember. So Udav mentioned that he mentioned this is like channel RFQ repo that he was like, well, the issue is that security, and if you review our code, then we can make it open source. So you can see the challenge with that, right? Like, then we have this additional burden of we have to review your code and then also somehow kind of like take responsibility. You know, if like your thing gets hacked, then you can, you know, you'll be able to say in public, hey, Daffy reviewed this code and he signed off, and you know, whatever. So it's also taking this additional responsibility. Does
I guess
that seem kind of unfair
to answer that specifically?
Sorry?
Yeah, to answer that specifically, and then I'd like to set some context around the conversation as well, specifically around entropy. But yeah, I think a lot of that is like our audits with Kudelski are about to start. And like the thing is, we keep updating things afterwards, and we know like they can't be on like a perpetual audit in the same way. And we're also super pro open source camp. We come from Ethereum dev where the standard was default, everything's open source. And even the stuff that we're working on, like we want to build on top of Mango and we want to add like a couple of more features, whether it's new markets or whether it's kind of a easier way for more flow to come to Mango or to base perp exchanges based off of what's actually happening on Friction. Like we've done almost 800 million in options flow because of these weekly auctions. And I think that type of flow is like kind of net beneficial for something like Mango to go through. But kind of, yeah, in our mind, like we've been trying to build on top of Mango. And I think what we want to do, I'll let like Vicky share a little bit more on kind of the vision around Entropy and kind of what we want to do there. And then how that would work potentially with building on top of Mango for context.
Yeah, so I didn't bring up Entropy. I was bringing up the earlier conversation about what you mentioned about the RFQ, channel RFQ, you know, as a response to Max saying we only want to use these kind of auctions if they're open source. And I think your refrain, and you know, not just yours, but pretty much everyone's, is the security issue. So that should probably be like assessed, right? Not singling you out or anything. It's just if you look at everyone, that's the answer. Is we're not open source. We will be in a few months or whenever, once our security audits are done. Is this? I don't know what you guys think. If this is like.
So I don't think I understand your question. Are you asking? I mean, actually, I just in this time of this, like I messaged Henry, and we're gonna like go through some of the channel stuff, hopefully, on Tuesday, and then see if it would be useful for you guys. And then, yeah, we want to open source it. If you guys want to use it, then we'll happy to do that.
Yeah, but the specific thing you said was, but we can't open source it now until a security audit, right? And that's not just something that you say. But that's like something a lot of people say.
Just like everyone.
Yeah,
everyone. And then we do the security audit and it's still an open source. That's the best one. Like we did, I think 7 security audits in the last quarter. Or Microwave
really
did them, to be exact. And yeah, we do them, of course, because we don't want people to launch shit on mainnet. When we launch updates, we read the code of the integrations to make sure we don't break them. Like we need access to the source code, of course, right? Like it's like ridiculous. Right? Like there's so many projects integrating with Mango. They're not open source yet because of security.
So we can set something up to ensure accountability,
right?
Yeah, we can set something up to ensure a lot more accountability because we do not have this intention, to be fully clear here. Like if you guys have a proposal on how to make this like enforced accountability, we're happy to kind of conform to whatever is useful there. Because we just don't sit in that camp. We don't want to do anything and then show up like 6 months later and everyone's like, oh, it's just a Mango fork. That's like not our intention. I think there's other projects out there that view it that way. But yeah, we can set something up to ensure accountability if you guys
but I'm
have
not
some
sure
ideas.
if that's like even I just want to like dig into that argument separate from your specific case, that specific argument of security. Would it be valid for Mango? Like, let's say, you know, we have Mango v4. Actually, v3, we should remember, I think was this back in July, where I was, you know, debating openly, just kind of thinking out loud. We had not even gone to mainnet with Mango v3, right? It was still in active development. And we were getting roasted by someone because I said, when you specifically open source, is something we're debating. Like, it does feel a little bit like there could be maybe a security bug. You know, we haven't had time to review all of the details. When should we open source it? And then we got like some guy, was it I Am Nomad, right? Tweeting out, Mango is against open source, which is, by the way, just despicable behavior. Just like, yeah. My internal thoughts was, what a despicable person. My external voice was like, let me respond calmly. But anyway, that's a valid point, though. I think like the point about security, if you ever raise this in public, everyone like jumps on you and says, just open source it. Like you can't get, you know, you can't keep it. You can't, security through obscurity is not security, which is a slogan which You know, I wish Armani was here to kind of defend it. But
And
is
yeah.
that true? Yeah, like I want someone to, yeah.
I mean, Radium is still an open source, right? And I remember they launched before us on mainnet with their version, I don't know, 1 back then or 2. And they were very sure they would open source in a month or something. Very, very sure. Just waiting for the audit. That was the first project we met that had this attitude. And then it just kept happening. Yeah, I think there's like, it's like, it feels a bit easier, and I think to a certain extent you don't need to pay bug bounties as much as we do, right? We paid a lot of bug bounties because all our stuff is open source and people actually check it and then they find something like way later, and
yeah,
we need to like sit down at like 3 a.m. and like figure out what the fuck we do to solve the bug, which I don't know why it always happens at that time, but something magnetic about security researchers in the night, vampires, right? And so it's literally not, I feel like it's more secure because they found the bug than someone else, but no one would probably have found the bug by reverse engineering from the outside at this point in stage where like Solana development is. I feel it's like, it's just too obscure. No one really knows how to do it. I don't even know if the wormhole was open source. Pretty sure their stuff is open source, right? And they were an example of like a project that got actually hacked, right? There was not a white hat op, and it was because their fix for bug was on GitHub before it went on mainnet, which is such a like awful way to lose money, right? Because you don't deploy before you go to like offsite with your team. Like it's just like such a backstab, right? I don't know. It just feels really, really sad to see these things happen, and somehow I feel like the obscurity works really, really well for everyone. I'm pretty sure like most of the teams not open sourcing would lose money pretty quickly. So I wouldn't say they're wrong, right? I think they're right.
Yeah.
Right, because everyone who has open source has been attacked like quite fiercely.
Yeah, even in public opinion, right? Like even when you have any reservation at all, you're like, my argument was, can we open source like 2 weeks after V3 goes to mainnet? It gives us a little bit more time to read through the code and tease out bugs, and you get attacked by like rabid animals on Twitter. We ended up open sourcing like 2 weeks before going to mainnet, if I remember correctly. But yeah, the bug bounty point is correct. Like we end up, and we also do the security audit, which we paid like 200 something K, and it takes a team like Neodyme, a whole month to do a Mango security audit, which we do a version of that for other teams for free. So anyway, this is not a complaining session. I should be clear.
Yeah, this seems like it's devolving into a pity party. And I
Rambling.
This is not a pity party. Hold on. This is not a pity party.
Yeah.
Let me refocus. Does this seem sustainable? So maybe the complaining part was, here are all the pieces of evidence and here's how we really feel. What about this? Does any of this need to change for this to be sustainable? Because if we lose, I think that's wrong. I think that's like, it's okay to lose if you see a problem and you don't fix it, that's because you hold on to some, like, I don't know, some hippie drum circle thing, and then you end up losing because of it. It's against my personal beliefs to do that. It's okay to lose, obviously. We can make wrong design decisions, we could get hacked, we can make a lot of bad choices, we could just be dumb, we could be lazy. All of that is fine, but I just feel like seeing a problem and then not addressing it clearly is bad.
I have a couple of questions. I'm also in the same camp. Like I don't want there to be like a uni sushi thing with other protocols. On here with Mango being the uni, the kind of OG, and I think there's so much dependency on Mango across the ecosystem that it's like pretty well accepted at this point. As someone trying to build and maybe add new markets onto Mango, like what's the best way we should do this?
I don't know what you mean by add more markets on Mango.
Yeah, maybe Tiki, do you want to share a little bit
Yeah,
about what we're trying to do here?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Cool. Just to chime in here, I'm working with Odav on the Friction team. We're really interested in power perps, square root perps. We have a lot of like consumer demands just from our vaults and also like a lot of liquidity from our market makers. And we were in the process of just like forking Mango and building an exchange on that, open sourcing it obviously from the get-go. Ideally, you guys would have the perps, and because since you guys are better infrastructure, and we would just source like the liquidity. But we just wanted to get it out fast, which is like the main reason for us going this route. I'm just curious on your thoughts on like what's the best etiquette in doing this.
It's very hard for me to understand like when you say sourcing liquidity, and does someone else kind of understand? Maybe I'm just like confused here.
I can go into it further. Sourcing liquidity as in just like consumers want to trade these products and we have market makers ready to provide liquidity for these products.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's all the big market making firms are like banking on market making, Squeeze and Squall and how they're all called. Sure. Right, we were asked to add it a few times. Which is not on our roadmap. If you think it needs to be fixed, if I was you, damn it, like just fork it, put it in, go to mainnet, launch it, see a crash and burn, right? Or fix it and make it out alive.
Yeah.
Right, like hitting the fork button and like deleting code you don't need and adding more code is how development should work. That's how I like to code.
Yeah.
I mean, look at Mango V1. That was me and Tyler like butchering Serum's UI to like the extent it was somehow tenable, and then deciding after 2 months, hey, we need to rewrite this shit. That's just how open source goes. We as a project,
we just want to scale.
We fundamentally haven't, like, I think like just not the bandwidth to work on like power perps or stuff like that.
Yeah, we're totally cool with that. Like we would love to build this like kind of with you guys and keep it going continuously so we can like continue to update with all the great changes that you guys are pushing out. It's more like, how should we properly do this to be safe? Because at the end of the day, there's like in 1 year, there'll be like 10 perp protocols on Solana, and like they'll all have some chunk of liquidity that's sitting there. And like at the end, maybe they're all just Mango in the back, but like I think it's unsustainable for us to want to take a view that we're going to do that. Like, so is there anything that you recommend on how we can maintain like long-term dependency?
I can't speak about I can't speak about everyone's opinion, but you know, I think Max is saying the same thing I'm saying, which is there's nothing wrong with forking. I also told you this in private DMs, right? So there's nothing. Yeah, I'm a little bit confused on what the specific ask is, but just the standard is like you'd fork it, right? That's why it's open source. It's kind of ridiculous to like put our code up there and then say no one can use this. That's not our view. That's kind of ridiculous. The view is more like we would like, you know, it's not even enforceable. We would like if people did this. You know, you guys are smart guys. You guys are going to add your own, like, you're adding power perps. You might add some other design improvements. There's, God knows, you know, all the design flaws in Mango. If you're going to fix those things, you should just also make it open source. That's the only real.
That's
quickly, right? Like not like 6 months.
That's our plan. In this case, since so much of it is actually just Mango dependent, then we should be doing it as soon as we like physically can launch this thing. And so much is coming from Mango, so that's our view there. We just wanted to make sure we're doing this in a friendly way.
Yeah, and yeah, if you live up to that, that's friendly. I don't see don't see anything
Yeah.
really against that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think where our discussion is more right out of our perspective. I mean, we look, can't give you absolution for the things you do, and can just tell you like what we would do out of our own perspective and what we have done when we were not satisfied with the status quo of another open source project and want to take it to the next level. I think that's should happen, right? But yeah, we're having like serious considerations now if we should continue working like this. Should add barriers of entry for other people. And it seems to me like that maybe the ecosystem is just waking up and we just need to be a bit more open and wait a bit longer. But ultimately, I think the end goal for Mango is always that these projects are to some way can circle back into Mango, right? So whatever you guys do, right? Like maybe we can unify it in one product in the end, or like figure out a way to work together on it. I think that's maybe the one of the core ideas we had. We said, hey, this should be really an open source project because it's just how stuff like gets good, right? Like in the end, like in like a very long term thing. We're just short term absolutely worried about the status quo of things because we don't see it going like this plan working out at all, right?
Yeah,
maybe this is yeah.
I'm like confident short term, not as confident long term, right? That's my that's what I'm trying to. You're saying you're less confident short term, but you're confident long term. So I'm curious about that because I see a lot of software. Maybe Linux is the only example. I mean, it's a big one, but it's well, it's to me the most notable example of an open source project that succeeded, or yeah, in the long term won out.
I don't know. Maybe it's easy to fork back. You know, I think that's the long term game. But of course, you can't fork back if the other side never open sources.
Right.
Right, and that's the problem in the short term, right? And then if the short term is a 3-year period where no one open sources it, and people create all kinds of like crazy code in divergent code bases that no one can ever read that shit, right? Like you can open source after 10 years of development, great, but no one's gonna understand it. So all the innovation is in there, but it's like tightly hidden and like hard to diff and like figure out what actually happened. I think there's like this, right? Like if a project runs for 2 years, it gets really, really hard to figure out from the outset what's happening. And you need these core contributors to like walk you through the code and explain you why things are that way. And at that point, open source is also not really beneficial to the community anymore. So I don't know if like people don't open source for 2 years, right? And then they bring out like 500,000 lines of code, right? Of like smart contract gibberish and different microservices and trading bots, and it's not easy to fork anymore, right? It's not something you can really like look at. Also, like I was wondering in like myself if Mango was at that point already, but happy to hear that it's still like manageable and people feel they can work with the code base. Yeah.
Well, it's Christian also made this point earlier, and I think this is actually the bigger point. It's there are specific design choices that we make. You know, just like how we do the caching, right? The cache, or how we do the funding payments, how we calculate that, and the keeper. That all came. That wasn't like the first thought that we had. I mean, we first had ideas about multiple transactions, and then we looked at how would that work in the UI. Would this, you know, how would the signatures work? What would be the, and so there would be a lot of such design decisions that we then narrowed down to, okay, let's do this cache and let's have this keeper. That's like no one's gonna fork that. or you can take that idea. It's almost, you don't even have to copy any code, right? You can just, and when you
Re-implement
rewrite
it.
it, you'll write it even better. So yeah. So one option that was thrown around was, it seems in Solana especially, the UIs are never open source. I mean, even Phantom Wallet is not open source, right? Which is the most used wallet. So one option thrown around was just make the Mango UI not open source. But the program is always open source. The client, SDKs, all that stuff is still open source. Examples. I don't know.
It's a tough one, right?
Yeah.
Would require change in how we work and how we build the SDKs, right? We need to like put more work in them. Current state of change, a current state of SDKs, definitely not tenable, will break. Future state of SDKs, maybe V4, viable, I think.
Wait,
unethical.
No, I didn't
Yeah.
suggest the SDK. I didn't suggest the clients would be closed.
No, they're open, but
Yeah.
Right now the clients are like spread into parts that you would then want to close source. Like if someone asks like, how do I like trade on Serum, then usually point them to the UI. That's the documentation for how to trade Serum spot on Mango, is look at the UI. So it's why I mean short term not feasible probably, or like has a cost. With a bit of re-engineering cleanup possible. But I think also shit. Where this other idea where we have like some like backend APIs closed source, then you need to run the UI. So you could in theory like copy the UI code, but then you need to sit down and build like candlesticks and like build like funding rate aggregators, interest rate aggregators. I don't know. Index a bunch of shit from on-chain. Transaction history and things like that. Like stuff that is not so simple to build on Solana. That's even, I think, like less often issue because then things are behind an API, right? And they're read-only, so they're not really. I think that's the other path, right? We have like, we can take off UI or we can take off these like off-chain services. If you have one of them, you can't rebuild it. Like you need to spend considerable time rebuilding. Well, if you have both, then it's very easy.
If you have both, what? Both, like
both the indexers and the UI, right? Like your indexes are like crucial component, and they're set as apart by Miles from a lot of the other protocols.
Yeah.
Or on indexing stuff.
Yeah.
To be honest, I don't really get what closing the UI would really get us, because the UI you can just look at on the web also, and you will interact with it and see UI innovations that you maybe want to take for your UI. So what's the gain of closing the UI?
I think well, yeah, Tyler's not here to really answer that. But maybe like design, like specific. Yeah, I'm not a UI expert, but things like styling, I don't know, things that just require like color, shifting pixels around on the screen that were set in a certain way, you can copy it. Like just simple like pagination of things. We were introducing a block hash feature to like timeout earlier. That's almost implemented in the UI. Like to make the timeouts accurate, we implemented this thing to. I mean, you'll see it, right? It's on a branch.
But now we
things
need
like
to be
that are on the
secret
UI.
about it. Shh.
What?
Now we need to be secret about it. Shh. It's closed source now. No.
Yeah.
So good. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's true. There's some like hardcore stuff in there that
Hello? Are you still speaking?
like probably no one even thought of. Which also relies on an off-chain service, right? An indexer. In this case, a block hash indexer. Yeah, I feel the indexes are like this like sweet spot. Maybe we just don't give support for indexes anymore. Like Serum History was a drag to support with people. Always hate when people ask questions about them. They're probably the biggest pain point. And they're pretty much like hardcore to build. Like they're not fun. They're not fun to build, I think. And a lot of our like, let's say, edge is in them, and I think most trading firms don't share them at all, and that's where their edge is.
Yeah.
So it feels like a.
You remember when Bonfida tried to charge us for the reason why we have Serum History at all was Bonfida was trying to charge for it. This was 2020, late 2020 actually, and we said, okay, let's just build it ourselves and make it open source.
And then someone will make the service, right? Someone will offer the service. Like there's no Bonfida, and we'll do a good job because they have our starting point. But no one ever did.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we need to give out grants for people to build these things in a way that I think the spin-off is maybe and then maybe the spin-off can decide if they want to go closed source and continue developing is the better way here. Because to some extent we want that the problem is solved, right?
Mm-hmm.
We want it solved good. And we want to maybe retain a benefit from it, meaning maybe, right, like even if people use that service, it's not completely open. It's kind of like what Amazon does, right? They're like heavily investing in open source, heavily copying open source. But then if you actually want it to run well, then you need to pay them a hefty premium for their work of making this easy to set up and easy to run and like and you need it, right? You need it to build a great product, some of these services. If it's like an email notification service or thing like that. But I also don't think it's sustainable for us to like build a whole cloud infrastructure, API platform, like indexing services for everyone. Like,
yeah. Well, we still have to deploy version 3.4, so might be a good time to call it on this.
Yeah, would be cool if everyone can like formulate some thoughts and like maybe we have like a more async flow on this. I think like frustration is there. Path forward should be like based on something that we can rally behind, right? Like we should all be on board with how we want to go forward because it has the potential to break some of our core values. So I think it's a very sensitive topic. And it would be great if people can like find a way to address it very sensitive also, but communicate openly about what they're in favor of. So we get a good overview of where the community is and where I want to take it here.
Yeah.
But in the end, that's what matters, right? Like if everyone says, fuck it, we need continue open sourcing or continue open sourcing, I think that's probably like that's what everyone agrees, and let's do it, because I feel that way anyways, like in my heart. It's just 10 times harder, and we'll just not sleep anymore. It's fine. Anyways, don't do it. So
Yeah. All right. Good chat.
Thanks, guys.
See ya.
I think